Let's give a big warm welcome to Clark graduate Stephen Howlsey.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming here today. Hopefully I can help you guys learn a little bit more about what I do and kind of talk a little bit about the transition from being a student into a tech career. I just want to start by saying I don't know everything, but I can tell you my story, and hopefully that will help you. We can talk about 3 main ideas today, and then I'd like to move forward to maybe a little bit of Q&A about my job currently or anything relevant to the presentation. The 3 key ideas that I want to share with you today is that you got to understand the variables that you can control when looking to get a career in marketing or tech. You got to job seek like a marketer. I'll explain that a little bit later. And number 3, school is not enough. That's idea number 3. Okay, so a little bit of context for myself. Born in Portland, raised in Vancouver on this side of the bridge. Went to Clark College here for 2 to 3 years and transferred to a 4-year university where I majored in marketing and business. Thought it was kind of funny when I was looking up Vancouver, Washington last night for photos that we made the list for the hippest city in the country according to some website. And they did an index of number of barbershops and tattoo parlors and brew pubs and like that kind of stuff per capita. And out of every city in the country, Vancouver, Washington, hippest city. So from the hippest city in the country, put it that way. All right, I discovered my interest in tech and marketing during my first advertising course at Clark. I was always a creative person and did kind of have some technical side of things as well. So when I took my first ad course, I was like, oh, this is cool. It's kind of like a marriage of those 2 things. And it was really confusing for a while to figure out what I wanted to do. So all that to say, I think a lot of times interests and passions are something that we discover and not something that we always know inherently. So if you don't know specifically what you want to do right now, that's totally fine. Just means that maybe it hasn't been discovered yet. Finished up at UO as mentioned. This is me when I was approaching graduation. These are a bunch of GIFs of people freaking out. I was really scared when I was approaching graduation. I didn't know what to expect when I was graduating in terms of finding a job. There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure to pay off student loans and make my, all these ideas that I had in my head. I'm like, gosh, I need to get this job before I graduate. So a couple bullet points just to give you some more context. During that time, during my time at University of Oregon, I started a business consulting with small businesses in the area, helping them with digital marketing, web design. This is me sort of tasting things. So I knew I liked marketing and tech, but I wanted to taste things. So I started to knock on doors and give a coffee shop a website, or work with them on trade, or work with another small business on their social media marketing to sort of taste things and build up a portfolio. I did a shotgun approach when graduating. I applied to 52 jobs in the Portland market. I put a geographic boundary on where I wanted to work, which is something we'll talk about as well. But I probably wouldn't recommend this. And then we're gonna kind of walk through my recommendation of what I would recommend doing. Out of the 52 marketing jobs, I got 2, leads, one of which was a full-time job, the other of which was an internship at a bigger ad agency. So I took the internship because I wanted the experience with the bigger clients. Even though I knew it was only going to be like 3 months there, I just wanted to kind of get the experience rather than work for a smaller company. After that, I increased my experience. I got a social media full-time marketing job at a local business here in Vancouver. Didn't like that job, so I worked around the clock to find a better job. So as you can see, there's sort of a trend here of like, try something, freak out, try something again, work hard, freak out, and worked around the clock to find a better job. So I knew I had to continue to improve my portfolio, knock on more doors, do whatever I could to fulfill those needs that I had. And the needs that I were looking for at the time were a creative space where I wasn't alone in my craft and I could be around other professionals that would help my development. At the prior job, I was like the only person doing what I was doing in that role, which for me personally, I found a little isolating. So I wanted to find something a little more inspiring. So I found a better job, and that was about 2 years ago, and I love it. So things take time, needless to say. At my current job, I mostly make the internet a better place for people and for robots. I do a lot of user experience. I do a lot of, in terms of user experience, just optimizing human experience for achieving a goal on a website, or I might do that in the way of tracking, or interviews, or user testing, heat map tracking. People like Google these days, so they want their website to show up in the top of Google, so I help with that kind of stuff too. That's called search engine optimization. It's a big part of my job. And also, there's this thing called digital advertising, and companies want to know how they're spending their money on Facebook and on Google and on anything you could think of, any website. They want, you see those banner ads, the annoying ones that pop up and say, hey, click on this. I help companies decide where that goes. So, sorry. There are some interesting blogs that I've written. I'm proud of some of these blogs that I've written, so if you're interested in getting into the specifics of some of the things I do on gravitatedesign.com under the company section, you can check out some of the things I'm interested in and write about. All right, so back to job hunting. All right, I think it's important to understand what you can control. This is something that I was able to connect looking back, but it wasn't really clear when I was applying for jobs. This might not be clear either right now. And some of this you might disagree with me on, but I can be happy to talk it out. I think it is smart to lean into your strengths as an individual and focus on some of the things that you have really high control over and can make a big difference when looking to get hired. We hire people at my work currently, and I will tell you a lot of the stuff in the green column in the far right, in the third column, attitude, work ethic, energy, communication, being on time is actually really important, being prepared for things, coachability, those type of skills, very important to have when you show up for an interview or show up for a job. You don't get handed that in a classroom necessarily. It's something that you'll need to work on yourself and improve, either through reading books, watching YouTube videos, having an accountability partner. All of those things are very, very important. I'd say medium level of control, or in terms of medium hardness, is relationships are very important as well. They can help you get into jobs, they can help you get recommended for things. Some people are maybe born into a family that has great relationships. That's super cool. Some people are not. You can always reach out and make connections to folks through LinkedIn or email and try to build your connections that way in the classroom. Other things that are kind of medium, hard to control is your experience, higher education, technical skills. Those things you can get, they take time. So you're not going to be like a JavaScript guru overnight necessarily. It might take you a few months, years, decades to really master certain skills. And another thing to consider is geography. So for me, I knew that I wanted to work and live in Portland. It's where I grew up. I really like it here. That obviously limits the number of companies that are in my segment that I'm going to target. I think one thing that's pretty hard to control is talent. So everyone has different inherent talents. For me personally, like I would love to be in the NBA. Even if I were taller, I don't know if I beat LeBron James out in the NBA. But I am really great also at user experience and digital marketing and these other talents that I have. So I'm leaning into those strengths, not just what I'm interested in, if that makes any sense. This is a thing. I did apply to a lot of jobs. I did interview at a lot of jobs. So I think mentally preparing for getting slapped in the face, this is a gif of somebody getting slapped in the face. You're going to get rejected a lot, and I think that's okay. It's better to look at the wins rather than the losses. So, for example, I'll talk a little bit about job seeking like a marketer. I was working in those two prior marketing jobs, one at the social media agency, then one at another larger business in Vancouver in a marketing department. And I was unhappy in that job. I wanted to do something else. So I thought, hey, why don't I job seek like a marketer? And instead of applying to 52, why don't I try to target, like companies do, segment a marketplace, target a customer, and really focus on that customer and don't think about anyone else and just try to put all my energy into that one job and application. So I reached out to every single employee. I narrowed it down to 2 businesses in Vancouver that I was interested in. And I got a list of every single employee on LinkedIn and every single employee's Twitter account. And I messaged them like on each account. So I was like 40 for this company, 40 for the other. So I sent like 80 messages. 2 people got back to me. So I wasn't like, 78 people didn't get back to me. I didn't like fuss about that too much, but I got 2 like yeses. I'm like, sweet, that's great. So I got a couple coffee appointments set up for those 2 folks that were interested in speaking with me. Prior to meeting with them, I researched their LinkedIn history. So when I showed up to that meeting, I was prepared, had a portfolio put together. I knew some of their basics, so I was not asking them like, what's your job title? What do you do? Like I kind of knew what they did already. So I think that's what I'd consider like positioning. So we can look at what job seeking like a marketer looks like. So segmentation is looking at the whole thing. So all the potential employers out there. Targeting might be, all right, I want to target geographically. You might look at the Portland metro. You also might look at other things like I want a fun workplace and I want to be at a mid company, maybe 50 to 100 employees. And I want to have these benefits or perks or whatever it is. So that's kind of targeting, trying to even whittle down from there. And then once you get across from the table from that person, how you position yourself might be different company to company. So talking about your individual strengths or your different background that you might find more relevant to that job position. It might be different at this company than that one. That's kind of what I think of as positioning. All right. So I wouldn't really recommend like thinking about getting a job like that. Everyone wants to get a job when they graduate, but I would think about what would it take to get the job that you really, really want, and focusing on those specific employers rather than just kind of thinking about whatever works. There's a PS down there. You might need to get a few A jobs before you get the job. So, me personally, I did it. Me personally, I didn't just like graduate and like walk into my dream job or whatever. It took me a few years, might take longer than that. I feel very fortunate, but I think that the more you think about that end goal, the more you think about that ideal situation and how you can map all of your actions to that, the more likely it will happen. And again, part of that is prepping for the interview, not just with your resume, but those things that we looked at earlier in green. So the way you're holding yourself, your attitude, your passion, your drive, that goes a long way. If you can't control how much experience you have, you can definitely control the way you show up across from the table. After getting hired at Gravitate, I figured out, I wasn't the only person that applied for my job, right? There were plenty of people that applied. It's actually one of the very last people that applied. And when I got hired, my boss was like, listen, I can teach you Google Analytics, I can teach you X, Y, and Z. It's really hard to teach people to be driven and motivated and excited about what they want to do. So I'd just say my personal experience, it matters quite a bit. And when we do interview people, we tend to be more interested in folks that have the drive than have a ton of experience and are maybe just kind of, not so into it anymore. Going above and beyond is something that you can take to your advantage as well. Maybe if you don't have a ton of experience in that interview, maybe if there's something unique that you can do, you could create unique cover sheets for each individual that's interviewing you. Maybe you, make a joke or something. Just try to stand out, whatever you can do in whatever is appropriate for that company to go a little bit further than what the average would be. And this last one is kind of unfortunate, but it is a reality. School's not enough these days. It's especially in the field of tech and marketing. I'd say specifically with web development, there is a lot of demand right now, so it is a good time to get a job in web development. But other fields, user experience or design, a lot of times what we're looking for is a good portfolio, a good body of work. Some examples of work that you've done has become a little bit more important than education. So this is a little sad GIF up here. Yeah, there's a couple things that you can do outside the classroom. So I put together four things that you can do outside of school that will kind of give you an advantage when looking for a job. Go to events is probably the #1 recommendation I would make, is to make connections with folks that will open your eyes to a certain industry, help you understand what maybe you go to a company's event and you can understand a little bit better what their needs are. You can find events on meetup.com, Eventbrite, or directly on company websites. So after you've targeted companies that you're interested in working for, you could look at their event calendar and see if there's anything that you can attend. This is another one I thought about earlier in the week. Conferences. You could go look in the Portland Metro for conferences and industries that you're interested in, buy a ticket, because a lot of folks that are in that industry will be there, and just start bugging people. Just during the passing, you could just start poking shoulders and saying like, hey, what's up? My name's Dave, here's my resume. Or something like that. Maybe a little less creepy, but I think that's another opportunity. There's just events, meeting people, long story short, it goes a long way. When you do meet somebody and you, actually #3, which is like starting to develop a relationship with a professional, I think events are great for education and sort of connecting with folks, but really connecting with folks, developing a meaningful relationship won't happen overnight either. So little things like liking their posts on LinkedIn, or you see that they just spoke at this thing, or that they just got a promotion, you could say, hey, that's great. Or you could catch up over coffee. Those type of relationships do take time, and I would recommend not going for the ask right away on the first meeting, which would mean you have your first meeting with a professional at a company that you want to work for, it would be probably inappropriate to be like, hey, can you hire me? that ask might come later a little more organically. Developing a portfolio is important, especially in my world of web design and development. So you could do this on personal projects and not even need a client. You could make trades with clients. So trades for experience when you're a student. You could trade for money, which is the ideal thing to do work professionally, is great. If you can't do that, you could lower the risk for the business you're working with and say, hey, can you trade for goods or services that we could just work out a kind of lower risk deal there? If that doesn't work, you could trade your time and just do something pro bono just for the experience. I've done plenty of that, and it's paid off for me for sure. I will say that the more experience you get, the more negotiating power you have. So as you continue to develop a portfolio of work and have a proven track record, you're way more likely to get paid for the work you do. All right, and then lastly, the kind of hardest one on this list is to work on both your hard skills and your soft skills. So working on your skills within specific technologies that folks are looking to hire for. So if you look at job boards and they're like, at your dream job, and they use Sketch or they use Photoshop, then probably a good idea to start messing with that. There's free trials of stuff. There's kind of comparable softwares that you can start to mess with. On the development side, if you see everyone is really requiring PHP, or they're building applications in React and you've not done that yet, maybe start exploring that on the weekend and try to learn these things outside the classroom. The soft skills are something you can do anywhere, but I do think it's important to get ideas of things you can practice. I found it really helpful to read books or watch videos on communication and then just kind of test that out when you're in like low risk situations. Maybe you're ordering some coffee or something and you try out maybe just talking to the barista for an extra like 30 seconds to a minute and just try to build confidence a little bit socially. You can also attend workshops and clubs. I went to Toastmasters for about a year and a half, and that is like terrifying. I was like scared of public speaking, and they make you go up in front of a group. My group was like 30 people and talk for a minute. In the first minute, you're up there, you're like sweating and bullets. But at the end of the year, you can talk for 10, 20 minutes, and it's not as scary as it was before. It's also a great place to get feedback in a club or with other friends or family. They can actually give you notes and say, you say a lot, you say a lot, you do this, you move your hands a lot, you hold this water bottle a lot, stuff like that. It's helpful to get feedback. You can get certifications beyond your just getting educated at a university or college. So for me, when I was entering social media jobs that I was applying for, I got certified by like Facebook and Twitter and all these other weird softwares I thought would look nice on a resume, and that's all for the most part free. I'm sure there's some other things on the development side of things that might cost money, but there's probably some sort of certification for AWS or whatever else it is. But those extra little nuggets add up. Okay, so that's all I have for this portion of it. Again, we can back it up to those main ideas here. Understand the variables you can control when looking to get a job. Job seek like a marketer, and understand that going a little bit above and beyond just school is very important and probably required these days. Yeah, so we can talk about any of those things, or if you guys want to talk a little bit more about what I do at Gravitate, we can do that too. So Q&A.
Where's Gravitate located?
We're in downtown Vancouver. So downtown Vancouver, next to Thai Orchid,
Okay.
which is a Thai food restaurant.
I know exactly where you guys are.
Yeah, and we're up above Sushi Mo. So we have a office space up there.
My favorite restaurant.
You like Sushi Mo? Yeah, it's cool. I'm afraid that the owner there is frustrated with us because we have a ping pong table right above her restaurant, and we're always like stomping around. So she seems to like us okay, but I always, every time I go in that restaurant, I look up at the ceiling and I'm like, it's not very thick. Okay.
So in the above and in the going above and beyond, is
Yeah.
that in the interview that you were talking about? And
I think that as a concept in general is a good idea. In an interview, couple small things that, just for example, I had an interview at a ad agency where I read all of the bios of the people that were going to be interviewing me, and I saw on one bio, this gal, she liked drafts, and on this other bio, this person liked football. So in the cover sheets, I handed them a resume with a cover letter with a picture of a giraffe on it with their name, and I gave that to the giraffe lady, and the football one as well to the football person. And in addition to that, this is something I'm just remembering now, I put in endorsements, so I had like letters of recommendation along with my resume in there. I just worked at Best Buy for like 4 or 5 years through college, but I asked my managers and my bosses, I said, hey, could you write me a letter of recommendation, please, and I can include that in my resume when I applied for jobs, and they're like, sure. And I did that with professors as well, and did that with businesses that I was doing work for trade, and trying to just go do everything I can to make sure that there's no way that they could say no. Like, why would you say no? This guy's got everything we need. He's got all the proof we need right here. That was kind of the thought process. Yeah.
So I think what you said was interesting. Not only maybe a LinkedIn recommendation, but one written out.
Yeah. Yep. And then LinkedIn's cool too. You could take the LinkedIn recommendation, copy it, and print it, and include it in your resume as well.
Yeah. Stephen, what's your typical day like at Gravity?
Okay, so was that the same question too?
Pretty much.
Okay, this
Way more.
question's really hard for me to answer because I feel like it's a blur. But I do get into work about 8 a.m. if you want the details. I have my thermos and my coffee. I'm checking email for maybe the first 15 minutes, and then it's headphones in, and I'm usually doing my analytical work in the morning. So I find that's when I'm the most diligent. So I do a lot of analysis in the morning of numbers and tracking and reporting, and just kind of that grind work that you do on the more of the data side of things. And then lunchtime happens, probably a ping pong game or two happens in between that time. And then we move into the afternoon, which I try to set myself up for more user experience, kind of more creative work. So I tend to thrive, or set up my meetings, phone calls with clients in the afternoon, to talk about the stuff I did in the morning. And then by the time I look down my watch, it's 5 o'clock, and time to go home and do it again. So yeah, that's a typical flow of a day for me. It doesn't always go that way, but that's how I try to break it down, is just understand what time of day I'm most diligent and less likely to get distracted. And for me, that happens to be like between 8 and 11. That's when I do my data stuff.
And what are the 4 apps that you use every day?
I use Google Analytics a lot. I use a lot of Google stuff. Gosh, I feel like my whole day is Google stuff. So I use a lot of Google Analytics. Google Search Console, or Webmaster Tools, is another that gives you insights into keywords that people are typing into Google or how a website's performing in Google search. Anybody familiar with Google Analytics in the room? Couple?
Heard of it.
Okay, so it's a wild idea that people want to track how many users are coming to their website, or how many times a user is clicking a specific button on their website, or how many phone calls they get. They want to know numbers. They want to know how well their website's doing from a numbers perspective. So how long did those users stay on this landing page, or how far did they scroll, or how many pages did they visit before they leave? That kind of stuff is within Google Analytics to better inform user experience. So these, in my particular role, and companies in UX specifically may have these broken out. I'm kind of like a UX researcher and a designer at the same time. So I would do the research to inform the layout of the design, and then that would then get moved into more like high fidelity design, where a designer will actually go into Sketch and not do wireframes, but do like design. And then they would design it, and then a developer would come in and work alongside that designer and develop it. And the whole time I'm looking over their shoulders and going, wait, it's not right. Or trying to make sure that what I had researched is actually being implemented properly. So that's, yeah. But to answer your question fully, I don't think I did. Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google Tag Manager, which is another weird thing that helps companies inject scripts into websites for tracking, for advertising, and other things. Slack is another application that I can't live without. We use Slack at work. It's a communication tool, so we can message each other as employees and kind of get things moving. Google Calendar is very important. I use a project management tool called MeisterTask, which is affiliated with MindMeister, like a mind mapping tool. Yeah, there's a couple softwares there.
So what do you like more? Do you like the cold, data points, facts, that side, or do you like the design aspects? And like which one would you like prefer?
I don't think I could live without either, because I get burnt out on both. Because I'll spend a lot of time on the numbers and the facts, and then go, oh, this is too much, and then I just want to be creative, and then I do creative, and I'm like, why does this matter? And I want to know why that matters, and I go research that. So it's kind of nice because I get to feed myself just like this constantly. Yeah.
What is your job title?
Digital strategist.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, kind of a weird one.
Is there a big difference between your clients who are more business to business clients versus business to consumer?
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. Yeah, there's a big difference. So a lot of business to business customers are focused on not mass market. They might be focused on 30 people, right? So, or more than that, but you're hundreds rather than hundreds of thousands. So selling like Campbell's soup to the mass market is a lot different than selling your AI software to 30 CTOs in a specific industry that you're targeting. So the thought process on design and thought process on search and all that stuff, I'd say we use similar like tactics, but we use a different like strategy, I guess, in the way that in messaging and all that stuff. Yeah, we can talk about that more if you want to. I don't know if you have any more questions about that. Do you have experience with either, or any interest in?
No, just like for web design, I've been looking into like the freelance world, and I know that a lot of freelancers target business to business. And
yeah.
There's like a difference between maybe they want more calls than like people searching.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say in terms of web design for business to business, it's really nice when we can improve conversions by like 1 And that's like, woo, like ring the bell, like we just got another sale, that's amazing. Versus working with the consumer brand where they're wanting to see like exponential growth, and the the growth is really nonstop. Where in business to business, if it is like a SaaS product, getting a handful of customers, at least a lot of the SaaS customers I use, like companies are making a big investment. Like they're not signing up for MailChimp or anything like that. It's like, all right, I'm the chief security person at Coca-Cola, and we need some software to secure our database to this other thing I don't understand. And then they drop like 7 figures on this thing. So like, I think we're one of the clients we work with got bought by McAfee, and their type of clientele is like they're dropping a dime to pay for the software. So if we sell one of those, then we're like, woo, like we're good for a while. So it makes it the goal seems a little more achievable to a lot of the clients we're working with, rather than like trying to tackle the mass market. Yeah.
SaaS, software as a service.
Yeah, software as a service. Sorry, that didn't come through.
Okay, so how does Gravitate protect their data?
We don't hold a lot of data.
Oh.
Yeah, Google does that for us.
So how large are you?
Me, I'm about 5'6". No, I'm just kidding. On a good day. I think, well, okay, Gravitate 25, 30 on average.
Do you get to work in a group with others when you research or analyze data?
A lot of my research I do alone, but I work in every stage of what I do with a designer and with a developer. And we have checkpoints throughout the process where we're making sure we're on the same page, such that when we get to development, and the programmers will appreciate this, you don't want to get to a point in development where you're like, yeah, that's not possible, or yeah, that's possible, but that's going to cost a lot more hours, or they end up developing something that research did not inform or informed differently. So the whole thing is about checks and balances, and making sure that at every point in the process, and there are different methodologies for software and web development. We happen to do more of a waterfall approach, tends to work better for our clients and our processes internally, meaning we go from like, it's more like a factory approach. Like, all right, we go from research into strategy, into design, into development, and then here it is. And then after we launch, it's a little more nimble and a little bit more of what you call like an agile workflow, where communication is very fluid, and we have goals, but those goals are more like targets that move and not like milestones that you have to hit in waterfall. Yeah.
Stephen, what are some of the design trends in the UX world that you're seeing customers ask for?
It's kind of funny because what customers ask for is usually the more conservative approach of things. But in terms of like what's trending and buzzing out there, a lot of talk of accessibility is a big thing. A lot of talk of we want to have. I mean, it's even funny. People still ask for responsive design, but you're going to get a responsive website, at least where we work. It's just people, that's one of their checklists still in their mind. They're like, it's got to look good on a phone. But we get requests for apps too, like mobile apps, but a lot of that development you can do in the browser now as well, so that's kind of funny. In terms of design, user experience design, some things that have shifted, just we can get nitty gritty for a second. A lot of the shift has gone from content going up to being above the fold. So there was a time where everyone was talking about, oh, your call to action's got to be above the fold. You got to have your button in the banner. You got to have when you land on the landing page, you got to have the form right above the fold. What we found through research, and specifically with like business to business, for example, having a longer landing page that's got really enticing content and really building a case for like why you might want to explore this product further, or instead of answering that user's question, click somewhere else on another page, why not just answer it right below in this next part? So that's another kind of interesting trend that's shifting a little bit. A lot of progressive disclosure, which is good sometimes, but I think frustrating other times. So progressive disclosure is like, instead of showing you all 8 fields on a form, they might show you one at a time. So they might show you one. All right, what's your name? Bob. Okay, Bob, enter. Whoop. And then to the next one, what's your last name? Thompson, Bob Thompson. Okay, boop. And then to the next one. So there's like that type of interaction, which is very trendy right now. Yeah, and all those things you can track too and see where users kind of dip and cut off, and it's very personal to the business and their customers.
Mm-hmm. I got more.
Yeah.
Oh no, but
Yeah.
Kyle has one.
What's about the ratio of workers you have to developers, designers, strategists?
Good question.
That's a good question. We have a lot of developers. For the developer ratio is high. So we have probably 2 developers per designer and strategist. So the reason that is the case is because every developer, it's very hard to be a specialist in everything. You can't be an expert in it all. Unfortunately, you can be an expert in it all. It's just very hard. And those people are somewhere else making a lot of money. But yeah, we have usually it takes a few developers on a project, somebody that specializes in front end, more aesthetic, somebody that specializes in back end or integration or that kind of infrastructure of a website. Those lines are more and more getting blurred, I would say, with web development, front end, back end, whatever end you want to call it. But yeah, there's typically an aesthetic person that's working on the CSS, the styling, and then somebody doing more of the infrastructure setup. Let's go back there for a
So
second.
how long does the web development process take?
Anywhere from 3 months to a year. Yeah, hopefully not a year, but usually we tend to 90 days to 180 days, so somewhere
So
in there.
that's about the average then?
Yeah, it's about 3 to 6 months is kind of where we hang out, which seems like a lot of time for a web design build, but we are a full custom shop, so that's not always the case. I mean, you could go home tonight, go to Theme Forest, download a WordPress theme, publish that thing in 15 minutes, and you'd be like, cool, it's your website. There's this thing called feedback. It's also a concept that you learn when you start working with clients, is that they have ideas too, and they want things to look differently, or they're slow to enter content, or give you the photos you need to put on the web. So I mean, it's very real once you get into it. You're like, oh, you think well, can't we get a website up in 2 days? Let's get this thing, let's get going. But you have other agendas and things that just take time. And at the point when somebody decides to get a custom website done, they have been through the process of getting a theme site done a few times, which is totally cool, but maybe they're just ready to level up and do some research to do something custom. And that just takes a bit of time. Let's go here and then we'll do, actually I think, let's go here first.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you guys use project managers.
We do, yeah. yeah. So project managers, very important. Project manager, account executive, whatever you want to call that role. I think at every agency and company they're a little different in terms of what they do and what their title is. We have account managers, And our account managers are in charge of communication with the client, setting expectations, scheduling, communicating to the strategist, to the designer, to the developer, and make sure that we're moving across each step at a good pace. We're on budget. We are, pleasing the client, surpassing their expectations, all that stuff. Yeah, very important. I'd say especially on the higher stakes projects, we do some small business stuff, which doesn't, maybe the project manager, or like, for example, if I work with a local business, I might be their primary contact and I might project manage myself, if it's just sort of a smaller engagement. But for like 80% of it, we have a dedicated person that all they do is just talk to people. They go to their office, they have meetings and talk on the phone. Important stuff. Yeah, because that, as soon as, it's like the Wild West with, without an account manager or a project manager. At least in my experience, technical folks are like so just busy, heads down in their work, don't always have the best communication skill, or maybe they don't have time to communicate with the client directly, so having a project manager is like critical. We're hiring for one of those, so if you guys want to be a project manager. Let's go down here.
So what is it you look for from a developer? What makes you pick one developer over another?
I think coachability, as in that green list. For me personally, when we have requirements, you got to know how to code. It's nice if you're familiar with WordPress, because that's what we tend to use. PHP, JavaScript, just kind of the boilerplate stuff. But in terms of personality, somebody that can be trained on our process and not have an ego and be willing to learn and is dedicated to their craft and is really, I'd say, a true geek for what they do. Somebody that is really interested in what they do. A lot of our developers are like, they would talk about this stuff after hours. Like if you'd go get a beer, they'd be like, "Oh, did you see that new script I built for this thing?" And like just somebody that's really in it and interested, because it's such a fast-paced thing in web development where things are changing constantly. And even in my world too, you have to be reading those articles and if you're not interested in it, it's a crash and burn. Yeah, so those things. And then back there.
Earlier you talked about kind of how you spend your day, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you do a lot of technical and then calling the clients. But personally, I struggle with knowing when to kind of research as trends are changing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you devote to knowing when to how much time to devote to researching things changing, and also where do you go? Where do you like to learn about these? What's in and what's
That's the stuff that scares me. Because I do try to, I think LinkedIn is an okay place. I mean, if you follow appropriate professionals or thought leaders as they're known, getting their posts and things that they're sharing is a great place to start. Every role has a different news outlet. So for example, I get a lot from just Google directly. Mm-hmm. So there's on Twitter, there's their search liaison, which is just the legitimate, we've made an update to Google search, here's what it looks like, here's what you might want to know. So that, I try to go to a conference a year. That's helpful just to kind of get a flood of information to go to a conference. And
your conferences focus on user experience design.
Yeah, I mean, this year I went to Digital Summit, which kind of touched on design, and it was more of a digital marketing kind of thingy, but they had some UX stuff in there. Yeah, it's hard to budget. That's not in my calendar. That's the stuff that you're man, I'm on lunch. I gotta look at this article while I'm getting a sandwich.
So you don't budget like a certain amount of hours per week to it, it's just kind of
No,
when you get to
no,
it? All right,
no, I
I'm
wish.
curious.
Yeah, I think that probably would be the more effective thing to do. Yeah, but I guess I'm a digital strategist, not a calendar strategist. Ed, back there.
So once you got a project done, and say the business wants to make changes to the site, how do you go about that?
So we have launched a website,
Yeah.
and then they're like, give us a call, and they're like, hey, can we make this button blue?
That, or like they want to like add a whole other page or something.
Okay, so a lot of the sites we build are set up to give the business control over their content.
Oh, okay.
So we set up templates and we work around, I mentioned earlier, the WordPress content management system, and build a custom theme to where they add a new page, assign a template to that page, we have our own content block system, similar to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Visual Composer or any of the page building tools within WordPress, but it's all handled within the content management system. That to be soon blown up by Gutenberg, which I don't know if you guys are from WordPress people or not, but yeah, Gutenberg's a whole other thing. If you're asking like, they want to change the design, they want to change the template or whatever, that's usually a phone call, a look at hours, do we have time left over from the project, are you working with us in an ongoing relationship? That's just kind of more the businessy stuff that we have to make decisions about, like, you know, you don't want to be a jerk, and if you just, they just want like one little thing, just like, oh sure, let's get that done, let's put the little sparkle on the painting there. But if it's something, if you're getting kind of pushed over with time and stuff, that's kind of where we have to say, not within our scope here, maybe we should look at a different agreement for that.
Okay.
Bruce in the back.
Yeah, so designing a website. We've heard over the last couple of years the mantra for mobile first, right? Is that something that your organization embraces? And the second part of that question is, how do you determine what shows up on the larger screen, the larger viewports, versus the smaller ones? And the third part, is it harder to design websites for smaller devices?
Okay, so in order of questions, question number one is, do we care about mobile first? And of course. A lot of that is informed from design though, so we'll do research to understand in the past year, how many of your users were on mobile? How many were on desktop? How many were on an iPad? And then we break that down and kind of, either way you're gonna get a mobile mock-up, you're gonna get everything. But that kind of lets us know what your users are more likely to use. So for example, have a brand that has 80% mobile. Seems like it'd be a good idea to spend a lot of time on that. Mobile design. We have other business to business, which they're 80% desktop the other way. And they use like Microsoft Edge or some browser specifically that we want to take a deeper look at. So yeah, we do mobile design. It is, I don't know if I'd say, yeah, what do we do to decide what appears and disappears? All of the content that you get on desktop, at least as far as we're concerned, you should be able to get that content on mobile. What tends to happen is that content might be within an extra tap. It would not be a great user experience to just stack everything. That would create for a very long page, and it might be hard for a user to navigate a page on mobile. So there are design innovations such as the accordion and other things that can help hide content, or I guess not hide content, but just make it easier to access on a mobile device without blowing up a page that will take you a whole day to scroll through. What was the third part?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, see.
That was 5 minutes ago,
Is it
man.
more difficult to develop to that, or?
Yeah.
As opposed,
Yeah, I
as
mean,
opposed to-
it's a lot more decisions have to be made about like what do we disclose and what do we hide, what's really critical. What you tend to find, I mean, it's very common. You get the hamburger menus, you get the 3 lines on mobile. The menu navigation is going to be, it's going to look different. You might be missing some imagery on mobile, but everything should be there.
Have you ever moved a hamburger menu away from the top right corner somewhere else?
I have not.
All right, try it one day.
Cool. I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, user experience of that work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm curious.
yeah. So the other thing with hamburger menus is some of them are what you call like a sticky navigation that follow you down. Some of them are static at the top of the page. They don't follow you down. Some are static at the top of the page. They don't follow you down, but when the user's intent is to scroll back up, then we let that appear. That's another thing that you can do. Yeah, what we've done footer. A lot of the problem with like putting a menu in the footer or hamburger in the bottom portion is that a lot of these companies have like marketing softwares or tools, chat bubbles that go down in the bottom frame. That things get a little weird looking when your hamburger menu is overlapping with a chat bubble. It's like, hey, I'm Steve. Talk to me about your whatever. Yeah.
How experienced are the web developers that you're working with?
Experienced.
Like years.
Good. Years? I don't know on average, to be honest. I would say not so important. Yeah, it's a good body of work, and we've hired people directly out of college. We've hired like industry veterans before that have been around for 10, 20 years, so yeah. Yeah.
How would you stand out in a job interview?
Let's see. This.
Do you know who those 2 people are, by the way? I know Steve knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know it.
They're from the movie Office Space.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the movie Office Space, you need to go watch it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I think just like back to this stuff, just being prepared. Like, show up, know what job you applied for. I'll interview people, and sometimes I'm like, maybe you applied for 50 jobs, and you're like, they don't even know what they applied for or what company they're at.
I mean, like, besides the obvious points,
So like things that you could do,
like how
maybe
do you answer like job interview questions?
I would say a detailed question. Don't run too long, but if you can have a example of a client situation, that's always nice. So if we're asking you a question of like, and I don't interview developers, just for the record, but if the question is specific to like code or a problem that you solved using PHP or something like that, and you being able to quickly answer that in like previous experience, or how you just, I would say like a lot of the initial interviews, you're just trying to get a feel for how the person's thinking. I mean, we'll find out how you code through either like a code test or whatever processes they use to qualify somebody in terms of their technical skill. I think a lot of it is just your problem-solving ability and maybe your composure. Those are important in the room.
So, how many tools would you say like your developers use? Like, they use the WordPress stuff. Do they use like Bootstrap and other things like that?
Yeah, I guess you're talking a little bit about like different like styling frameworks and stuff.
Yeah, not just styling though, but yeah.
Yeah, to all that we use it wouldn't make sense to reinvent the wheel every time you go to develop a website. So we take a look at technologies that exist that are tried and true, and try to use those technologies to make the project better, more reliable. So whether it's, I guess we don't use Bootstrap specifically, like Foundation, and then, like, for example, like jQuery might be something we use on a site to do some JavaScript styling. So yeah, it doesn't make sense to completely reinvent the wheel every time. That being said, we don't rely a lot on plugins, WordPress plugins specifically. A lot of client apprehension about them in terms of security, site speed, and stuff like that, or design, we may not be able to get a plugin there design-wise. So a lot of different tools. It's more like, how do you know which tool to use when? Right. That's more of the question.
Sorry, I don't know how many questions you want to say.
No, I mean, I'm good.
I don't know what your limit is. Something that I really
300.
learned out in the real world and I struggle with my discussion is like designers working with developers, like that relationship and like what you would recommend to either a developer or designer to kind of mend that gap, because I feel like they have two different like brains and see things so differently. Yeah, I think a good project manager, account manager to help mediate a conversation's very helpful. You don't always get that privilege though. So I think especially in this, run into, I don't know, such a tough,
Yeah, I think it all comes down to like focusing on the end vision. In a web design project, there's a very clear end goal. So if and really things do get stuck at the point of development. So that's usually the point where pressure gets put on, and either that developer needs to, the account manager needs to make a decision and say, hey, listen, developer, I know it's going to take you some more time, or maybe too much time, so let's hold that for after we launch. Or it's just a lot, that's just a lot of the interpersonal stuff. It's very hard to communicate with somebody that's like really, maybe they're really left brain, you're really right brain.
Is that why you do lots of check-ins to kind of prevent those kinds of
I just can't think of too many of those instances, to be honest. Like, we don't get too much of that. Where the frustration comes is where a developer is approached with a surprise, where they're like, whoa, where did this design come from? We didn't look at this. We don't have time for this. That tends to be where the frustration comes in, and that's just a communication problem. Yeah. But yeah, just one other follow-up. When designing stuff, developer is there the whole time. So they're there with me when I'm wireframing. They're there with the designer when they're like sketching stuff up, just to make sure that what we're doing is feasible within the budget and timeline.
Cool.
What are some ways you help improve the client's SEO?
Yeah, it's a good question. Depends, I guess.
Depends on what the client wants?
Yeah, it depends on their industry and what they offer.
Let's say a large tech business working with AI or something.
So in the case of trying to improve SEO for like a software as a service like AI, okay, not a lot of search queries for, I guess you'd start with research, just like you do anything else. So you start with keyword research, like what keywords are users typing in that are driving traffic to the website. Okay, cool. We got our list of keywords that we've researched through different tools that we've used in Google Search Console or SEMrush or Moz or any of those SEO tools. And we go to Google. We type in the keyword, hit enter, see what shows up. All right, great. Here are the things that are ranking in the top 5. Wonder what these people are doing. Let's click on their website. Try to understand that a little bit more. Okay, these 3 articles that are ranking for artificial intelligence for transportation, they're ranking really well because they have a backlink from all these different universities that are pointing back to their site, or maybe that they've written just a really great piece of content and we need to think about our content strategy. So it's just like a research strategy back and forth. I wish I could just like bloop, click a button and just yay, make a website go up the Google ranks, but yeah, it's not that easy. Those those AI or those business companies can be pretty cutthroat though, so it's like kind of hard to rank for that stuff. That's why you see a lot of them go after paid search. Yeah, just a little easier to close that way.
Is SEO one of those things that it's not set it and forget it, it's more of you have to periodically visit and tweak?
Yeah, it is like a pump. I'd say that there is like a little bit of front loading that you can do to make things easier on yourself down the road, but you cannot stop creating content on your website. You can't just let things sit there. Other websites will start to outrank you at some point. So yeah, it is a churn. It's just over and over and over and over again. But it works. I mean, it really does work. I was just looking at some reports yesterday, like literally doubled, this direct-to-consumer company I'm working with, like doubled their organic traffic and revenue. It's like, ooh, like that feels pretty good. Like over a year, it's like it's stuff that does work. It's just a churn. It's a lot of energy, from both parties, us and then the client.
And organic would mean what for the people who don't know, Steve?
Organic traffic would mean coming from a search engine, so coming from Google, Bing, Yahoo, really Google, and not coming from social media or not coming from paid or direct, like a link. So that's organic is typically what we consider Google.
Do we have any other questions for Steve today? Kyle, wow.
So is SEO optimization different for different search engines?
Yeah, so we usually focus on Google, but then the next one down the rung would be YouTube, and then the next one down the rung would be Bing. So yeah, YouTube is the second largest search engine. So yeah, content strategy, keyword strategy, all the tactics that you use are different in each place, but we usually start with Google search first. Yeah, actually, I might be incorrect. It might be Google, YouTube, Google Images, and then Bing. Yeah, but it's like Google something, and then yeah, a little like maybe 3% Bing and Yahoo.
So with the Google tools, Steve, you're actually able to see keywords that people are typing in per what? I mean, per your customer site, per your geolocation?
Just a search engine at large.
Search engine at large.
And you can, that's a great question, you can, local search is a whole other thing. So looking within a geography of like, best copy near me, like that kind of stuff is, Google is going to look at your location through whatever means to find relevant search results near your location. So the best copy near me, here I might get the Hannah Hall copy and maybe some other like Compass copy. Yeah, totally different strategy for sure.
When you're looking at websites that you see every day, what's something that's a pet peeve?
That's a good question. I am not a fan of pop-ups of where like I'm reading an article and then my mouse goes up and I'm like trying to leave and then they go, whoop, would you like to sign up for this email thing? I'm like, go away. So that.
Oh, I'm clicking to leave.
Yeah, it's not a great impression in my mind. That's another idea. There's this thing called impressions in like Google search or, or like advertising, they call it impressions, like how many people have seen your thing. Not all impressions are good impressions. Just, like there's a lot of bad people that have a lot of awareness and a lot of good impressions, but people don't like them. So, or like, Comcast has a lot of impressions or a lot of awareness, but nobody likes Comcast. So, yeah. Or like Christopher Columbus, he's got a lot of impressions on Google. People don't like him very much these days. So stuff like that.
So you mentioned YouTube, do you create content and put it on YouTube also?
I don't, no, not me personally, but we would inform
Only
the
your company?
No, that's not, I would love to do that, but we will, like, for example, maybe do research to inform the content, and we're just not that big, or don't have that, the talent for that quite yet. Yeah.
That sounds like something you need.
I love video. Video's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Maybe one more.
So what's the application process for a business to hire you to do work?
We get phone calls. We get people fill out a form. We've done a good job on our own SEO. So if you Google Portland web design, we're usually like #1 or #2, pops up there. For the longest time, if you Googled like New York web design or Seattle web design or San Francisco web design, like we'd also pop up because we kind of hack things. But turns out Google is smart now, and they know that we're not in New York and in LA and all those places. But it worked. It totally took the business to another level. So yeah, we usually get people it's just a consulting thing. So somebody would give us a call. We would have a conversation about your needs. It's just that whole qualifying the customer thing and then making sure it's the right fit.
Do you mostly meet them in person, or is it?
No.
Okay, you don't.
No, I haven't met like 90% of the clients I work with in person. A lot of them are in Silicon Valley. They're in New York, or they're in who knows where. They're in Australia or Europe somewhere.
He's like
What's the
Zoom.
most obscure place that you have a client?
Like we have a couple of clients in Africa somewhere, which is not too obscure, but like just like businesses. It's like, how did you find us? Like, yeah, and it's usually because they Google something that we rank for. So we're just at more SEO stuff.
Do you use like GoToMeeting, Zoom?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do go to meetings. Some clients want to do the video thing. Most don't.
Okay.
I love when I meet clients, so it's a lot of fun. We try to work with more local business now because we're not ranking for the stuff we used to. So I'd say we're shifting gears more to local business. It's a lot more fun.
Okay. All right, Stephen. Thank you for your time
Thank
today.
you guys.